Week one of the NFL season is officially in the books, and it's time to turn the page and start looking at Chapter 2, Week 2 coming up on Thursday night. Welcome on into GoldSheet TV. I am your host, Eric Pauly, with my co-host, Dan Alexander. You can find him on Twitter at Neuby Talks. Neuby, let's get right into this. We saw a ton of things happen this week. We were talking about the script writers before the show, and, I think they did a relatively good job, all things considered. Obviously, what happened last night was unfortunate for Aaron Rodgers. Jets still pull off a crazy victory. We don't want to spend too much time recapping because we want to provide some actionable info for this upcoming week, even though, of course, it's just Tuesday. The grind of the NFL never stops. But we are going to start with a brief little recap of a couple of things from week one. Let's start with some of the plays we locked in on the show. And just personally, Neuby, how was your week one?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. This is why I don't enter the Circa contest, simply because the amount of money that you have to throw in to go toe-to-toe with people who sometimes know what they're doing and who sometimes get crazy lucky. I would have been 3-2 in the Circa picks, and I probably would already be eliminated from the quarterly prize going 3-2. But no, it was a great weekend. I think week one is a very hard week to bet, especially for contrarian and quote unquote sharper bettors. But I also think week two can be a spot where you really get some overreactions getting baked into the marketplace. So week two, historically for me, has been a very profitable week. I hope that it continues again this year, kind of fading maybe what some public perception is for folks who maybe didn't watch all of the games. Because I know you, like me, probably had 6 screens going and you were already getting ready for how we were going to bet week two about midway through the 1 o'clock slate. At least that's how I was working.
Yeah, I was on that same exact time. So last 2 years, I actually had a great week one. I think that week one is a great situation. Like you said, it's hard to confirm any priors or, kind of find the sharper side because you don't really know what's going to happen. But on the other hand, if you do have strong conviction in some of your prior notions on some of these teams that might not be in the market, baked into the market whatsoever yet, you could find some value. With that being said, GoldSheet team, not the best week one by any means. We had a couple of big wins, including a 3%. We had the Raiders plus the 4, another teaser win, but got a little bit too cute on props. I mean, we had a Skronik over receiving yards, just an 8.5 number. He had 3 targets, which should normally be able to get you 8.5 yards. Unfortunately, did not connect with him in that game. They were too busy running the ball. The Rams with, I think Cam Akers had 25 rushes for 30 yards or something. It was kind of crazy. And then Sam Howell passing yards. I mean, they priced him at 207.5, which kind of showed that he was one of the worst QBs in the NFL. And while he didn't have a great performance by any means, he only had 202 yards, and there were ample opportunities for him to pick up those last 5 yards. But the way that game went with a bunch of turnovers on each end, never really had a long field to work with. And he had well over 100-plus yards heading into halftime. So a little bit of a bad beat there. It's one of the bad reads on Pittsburgh and the under in the Chargers and Dolphins game. I thought that maybe, kind of like the Lions, Chiefs, so much hype, so much offensive speak. It could be a low-scoring game. Yeah, gonna put the egg on the face there. Got that one incorrect. But other games that we discussed, you nailed it with Baltimore. Talk to me about how that looked. And your Birds did not deserve to cover that game, but they did.
Yeah, that's sometimes how it goes, man. That 4, it's not like it was around a key number. It's funny that they end up winning by 5. I feel like that always happens when it's that corridor of, 5.5 points down to 4.5. Somehow it always ends up around the number when I'm on that. That time it was just the wrong way. I'll take it as a Birds fan, but man, they look bad. We'll talk about that when we preview Thursday Night Football coming up. But for the Ravens, it got there a little bit uglier than I expected it to be, but really the crux of the handicap that we gave on the show last week was that if there was an opportunity for Baltimore to flex their muscle and run up the score a little bit, they were going to do that. I thought the offense looked way more pedestrian than I expected it to look. Lamar Jackson looked like, he wasn't really taking many risks out there. And really, if you just look across the NFL and what happened, the guys who got the bag, the Burrows, the Lamar Jacksons, the Jalen Hurts, they had a horrible week one. And especially in the case of a Lamar Jackson and a Jalen Hurts, it looked to me a lot like there was maybe some talk when they got this big contract that, hey, we're going to give you this money, but you better not be running and taking bad hits, because both of these guys were going down way earlier than how you would typically expect them to be going down. So really the threat of the run that makes these two players one of, some of the hardest to defend in the NFL really wasn't there. So yes, the Ravens got home. I just think, that was experience versus inexperience with the coaching staff. I think the Texans are still going to be just fine, at least moving forward. They're not looking to go Super Bowl or bust this year. So that one was good for us. Some of the other leans that were given out, we had Rams, we got that outright. Titans had one of the most Titans losses. They end up losing by a point, but they cover the spread there. And then you and I kind of had our crossfire. You had a play you loved. I had a lean towards Chicago. Man, that Chicago lean wasn't even a little bit right. Yikes. But it was a good week one. I do these contests where you have to pick every game against the spread. Ended up 10-6. So we did see it well, but as the show goes, just splitting the plays 1-1 for the folks. Got to be better. We've got to get a 2-0 sweep coming up this week.
Got to be better. Left some meat on the bone there, especially for myself and the GoldSheet team. Not playing the Packers despite how, passionate I was about them as a pick, and they actually proved me correct in every single sense. Then a team I did back with conviction was the Pittsburgh Steelers, and just like your Bears pick, could not have been more incorrect on how I handicapped that game. I anticipated Pittsburgh to do Pittsburgh things, have the momentum going, and something that also you mentioned is with those quarterbacks, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, that performed terribly. None of those quarterbacks played a single down in a preseason game.
Yep.
And, they were rusty, and it showed right there. And then on the other hand, you have the preseason darlings, the Pittsburgh Steelers, who look like this high-flying offense in the preseason, get absolutely destroyed by one of, if not arguably now, the best team in the entire league. But enough on how we did. Of course, obviously want to improve, and it's always great to look into what you did wrong, how you can improve and move forward. Let's talk about some things from a reactionary standpoint, because the biggest theme for week 2 is always overreactions and underreactions by the betting market. We have teams who looked amazing, who are due for stinkers, and teams that look terrible, who maybe not be as bad as they seemed. We'll go right back to you, Neuby, to start. The Bengals did not even score a singular touchdown. Joe Burrow threw for less than 90 yards, and I think he completed less than 50% of his passes. Again, did not practice all summer or play a preseason game. The Browns historically play them well, and Jim Schwartz, their new DC, was an assistant for Tennessee last year, so it's not like he didn't have any familiarity trying to defend this Bengals offense. He did have it, and the Browns simply had better defensive players in general on their team this year. So some people, myself included, are willing to give them a pass. What about you, Neuby? You willing to give the Bengals a pass, or is this a sign for what could be to come the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think I'm a little bit surprised with some of the Bengals discourse that I'm seeing on the timeline, hearing from some of the talking heads, because didn't we already know that the Browns kind of have the Bengals numbers? I mean, the only time that the Bengals have beat the Browns these past few seasons has been when they matched off in the playoffs. Other than that, you're looking at a 32-13 win in 2022 for the Browns. Before that, a 21-16 win for the Browns. Before that, a 41-16 win for the Browns. So, I think there's a little bit of a overreaction to thinking, oh, the Bengals are done. Joe Burrow looks terrible. Because as you said, not only did he not play a snap in the preseason, he was coming in off an injury. He didn't play a snap, not because of choice, like a Lamar Jackson, like a Jalen Hurts. It was due to an injury that happened the first time that he was out there. You think that might have been in the back of his head a little bit. And then, they were playing in a monsoon. A pass-first offense was playing against a defense that has an insane pass rush that could just pin their ears back because wide receivers were slipping on their routes. I think it's a major overreaction to hit the panic button on the Bengals. I think they will be just fine. And, if you don't know how AFC North matchups go. You just saw on Sunday how AFC North matchups go. They smell blood in the water. These teams are crazy familiar with each other. They get overly aggressive, and that's what happened with the Browns. Not to take anything away from the Browns, I think that they showed, hey, even if Deshaun Watson is a little pedestrian in his efforts, their defense is going to be good enough to win them some football games. Seeing the Bengals not score any points was alarming, but I don't think it was sound the alarm kind of style. I think the Bengals will be just fine. And also, they've been pretty bad in week one under the Joe Burrow regime. So not surprised there. I'm not ripping up any Bengals futures that we have there. It was just a nice game plan by Cleveland. They took advantage of the weather. So, stop it on the Cincinnati to miss the playoff stuff. That's not going to be on my ticket. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, definitely agree with you there. Like you said with the AFC North, like that division in terms of close games and like crazy contests, like they're one of the just like you said, watch an AFC North game and you could see it right then and there. It's like nothing else that's happening in the world matters except what's happening on that football field. And
yeah,
I'm just gonna agree with you here. I personally have not been reading too much into like whether we should be so concerned about the Bengals. Like you said, the history with them and the Cleveland Browns is true and it's real. They know how to defend them very well. Burrow did not even play preseason, didn't even practice all training camp because he was hurt. And also the Bengals were a slow starting team. The year they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago and last year, they started off slow as well. People attributed to maybe a Super Bowl hangover, this and that, but no, they just simply have to get over that. Of course, it's not a great trait to have, but slow starts seem to be in the Bengals, just in what they do, unfortunately. So I am not ready to write off Cincinnati by any means. But a team that I'm ready to show unconditional support for, and not just because you convinced me about Matt LaFleur winning the Coach of the Year award, but the Green Bay Packers. So you kind of, I'm not going to say completely talked me out of it, but when you mentioned, like the motivation factor, it's like, okay,
yeah.
Aaron Rodgers is finally gone. Like the Bears should finally that should be a game where they come blood fired up, like ready to hopefully start a new chapter on the Packers-Bears rivalry. This get absolutely smoked. And I want to overreact and say that obviously the 49ers are probably number one and the Eagles, Cowboys 2 and 3, but the Green Bay Packers might make a push for the number one seed in the National Football League. I say this, of course, with a slight grain of salt because, like I said, those three teams are definitely still better than them. And the Bears are terrible. But like we spoke about and like we kind of predicted, the fact that the offensive line for the Packers is great. The fact that they have two great running backs that also contribute in the passing game. Those two things itself alleviate the fact that they are limited on weapons and experienced weapons on the outside. Like Christian Watson, their best receiver, didn't even play. And they still just move the ball seamlessly. And they have talent across the defense. So Neuby, you want to put some water on this for me or what? But I think that the Packers, I already have them to win the NFC North. I am convinced that is a winning ticket in week one.
I hope that you're right here, man, because if they get the number one seed in the NFC, let's cash that Matt LaFleur 18-1 Coach of the Year ticket. I mean, I agree with you. I will say the one thing that gives me pause is they were playing the Bears, and the Bears looked exactly like how the Bears have looked against the Packers. I had all the motivation. I had all the bravado. We had Justin Fields entering after, a decent finish for the last part of the season. But this Packers team, I mean, what an incredible game plan. And like you said, yes, they have limited weapons, but I don't think you can discount how good Jordan Love looked because it wasn't just the output. And if fantasy players and DFS players had him in their lineup, they probably had a winning week because he probably didn't cost next to anything. And the output that he had was terrific. The decision-making was great. And I think a lot of that has to do with what the head coach did, putting him in positions to succeed. It doesn't hurt when Aaron Jones turns the clock back and looks like, as great as he did early on in his career. That was also a guy that we talked about, or I talked about being bullish heading into the year. He does come up. He's a little, injured on the hamstring. So we'll see how that plays itself out. But I'm right there with you. The defense did what they had to do. They had a terrific game plan offensively and defensively. So I don't know if I'm rushing out to take them number one overall in the NFC, because that 49ers team looked pretty damn good as well. But as far as thinking there was going to be this huge drop-off because Aaron Rodgers left, that was something we told people to pump the brakes on heading into the season. It played itself out in week one, and now they have the Falcons on deck. They get to come home and take on the Packers. Lions are waiting in the wings after that. The Raiders, the Broncos, a Vikings team. So as I'm running down this schedule, it is lining up nicely for this team to have a strong record heading into their bye week. So, hey, while I might not be placing the bet with you on them to be the number one seed, I'm surely not talking you out of it, because I was impressed, even though it was against the Bears for sure.
Yeah, and I will completely admit this is a complete overreaction. Number one seed is a pipe dream. But with that being said, I am just thoroughly impressed, and being somebody who's holding an NFC North ticket for them and to make a playoffs ticket for them, couldn't have asked for a better start in terms of what Love looked like, and confident, composed. Again, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I read that the Bears only had like 7 pressures in the game. So, we're talking about the Chicago Bears still, which I know, like, this is another reason why, just a quick tangent, while I'm just mad at myself for maybe getting too cute and not just backing the Packers like I spoke about on this show, is week one, you got to speak with your convictions. And I was convicted that I am higher on the Packers on the market and lower on the Bears on the market. Every single one of my preseason previews that I wrote and spoke about, I talked about liking what the Packers can possibly do this year and thinking that all the smoke and steam for the Chicago Bears being good was fake news. And what do? I don't even place the ticket, and it would have been like a complete validation of what I thought. And heading into this week, I mean, the Falcons opened at PK or -1 at certain books, and now it's already kind of flipping to Packers -1, -1.5 as well. I don't know if backing the Packers would be too much of a, we don't want to be betting on like the square side this week, because they look great. Jordan Love looked great. On the other hand, you could say the Falcons looked good. If you look at just the box score and the stats and the final score, you would think that the Falcons absolutely blew the doors off of the Panthers. And we'll talk about this more on Thursday, because I'm sure we will be breaking down games on Thursday. But I am intrigued with the Packers, and I am happy that they start off the season on the foot that I'd like them to start out as. But going back to Chicago Bears, this is something that I completely agree with you with. We're talking about Justin Fields. Now, the Bears, I want to give them a little bit of leeway, and feels a little bit of leeway, because the Packers and Bears obviously know each other. They play each other twice a year. So, the Packers, concocting a defensive plan to slow down Fields makes sense, because they're so familiar with what he can and can't do.
Yep.
He did not look good, and there are people out here who bet real dollars that they went to work for to earn on Justin Fields to win the MVP, which baffles my mind. You should just go to St. Jude's next time. What do you think about Justin Fields and these Bears? Because no, right? Like, they're not good.
Yeah. Either donate it, or we'll put our Cash Apps and our Venmos up on the screen next time you want to bet Jalen Hurts for MVP, and you can just give us a tip. Hey, if you don't do that, hit that like button and hit subscribe. But man, for me, it's not like I feel like we keep talking about Justin Fields like he's some young and spry. Now I get it, he's not old. He's just 24 years of age, but he's entering his 3rd year in the league. And I know that he hasn't had any full seasons because he was inactive 2 games last year. He didn't play in 5 games in his rookie season. But, man, for a 3rd-year quarterback, 216 yards, just 64% completion rate. And they go out, they spend money, they give some draft capital up to bring in DJ Moore, and we can't even get him the ball. I didn't understand what he was looking at, what the game plan was. And even if you just look at how he finished last season, I think there was a lot of romanticizing Justin Fields coming into this year. How he ended last year: 75 yards passing, 119 yards passing, 152 yards passing. And I know people are saying, well, what he brings to the game is what he can do with his legs. Well, he had 27 yards rushing against the Packers. And I know it's a game plan. I know it's how they do it. But how he did it to end the season against a divisional foe last year: 45 yards rushing, 15 yards rushing, 61 yards rushing against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, that's not bad, and it alleviates what he does in the passing game. But, dude, I'm not putting them quite on my do not bet list, but I'll tell you what, as the Chicago Bears are taking on the Buccaneers, who are coming off a win, an outright win, one that I kind of expected. I don't know if I can quite, say, hey, this team is done for, but I'm certainly starting to go into the camp that Justin Fields is kind of what I thought he was coming out of college, and that's a fine athlete, but not a guy who's going to win you many games going away. So I'm out on the Justin Fields stuff. When I come on here and try and make a case for the Bears, slap me in the hand and tell me, don't forget about what Fields did to you week 1. I bought into the hype, and man, they weren't even a little bit close. That final score wasn't even indicative to how much they were dominated in that game. I'm out on Justin Fields. That's an underreaction for everyone else, but it's one that I'm taking to the bank. Fields isn't the guy for me.
Yeah, and honestly, like straight up, in order to be good at betting on sports, football, or just anything in life, you got to look at what you have seen incorrectly, evaluate why you were right and wrong, and move forward. So, Neuby, very proud of you that you were able to see the light on Justin Fields, that he did not throw the football. And just another thing, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, and this was from last year, but the fact that the Bears they had the first overall pick, and they still threw the ball, one of the least, if not the least, of any team in football. Yeah. That does not show you how little they trusted Justin Fields. I am literally not sure that there is another statistic that could back up having less confidence in your passer to, perform well. Heading on over to a team that won and covered a spread, but I'm still kind of out on now. I have a ticket on the Titans to win the AFC South and the Jaguars not to make the playoffs. And while obviously this isn't good for those tickets because they won while the Titans ended up losing, and of course, the Colts and Texans lost, but they were never really going to ever be in that race. Jacksonville Jaguars. So while they won, they still kind of confirmed some things for me about why I am bearish on them. Caveat again, the rest of the South is so weak that the Jaguars could just be 9-8 and win the South, and see what happens from there. Like not really improve from last year. It'd be worse than last year, but still get in because of how bad the Texans and the Colts are, and arguably 3 interception Ryan Tannehills in Tennessee over there. But I am just still not impressed with what they did. The Colts played this game very well, even when, if you look at Anthony Richardson, NFL Next Gen stats, he literally threw, I think, 95% of his passes only to the right side of the field. They didn't even attempt to throw it to the left side of the field because they know how limited he was. And the Colts still put on a performance that was close enough to winning this football game. And if you really dove deep into the numbers and looked at the box score and watched the game, yes, the Jaguars won by 10, but it wasn't a 10-point dominating victory where they, won the entire matchup. Trevor Lawrence, though, I will have to, I'm not here denying greatness. Like, he still looks like the guy. He will be the guy. Like, he is going to be this perennial all-pro type of player in the NFL and one of the top 5 quarterbacks. Like, he's already shown that he's done that. But my issues with Jacksonville were their offensive line and their defense. Their offensive line did not look great against an average Colts defensive front. Definitely not terrible, definitely not great. And even against this Colts secondary where Trevor Lawrence played well, I would have expected more against a secondary that is just so deprived of talent. Now, again, Gus Bradley, veteran DC, and has been with the Colts last year, so you've seen Trevor Lawrence. Also, again, week 1, you've had all summer to prepare for your opponent. So not a situation where you should be coming up all too flat because you had all summer. So that makes things like the Bears loss look even worse because what were you doing in training camp this entire time? But I'm out on the Jaguars. So I guess this is an underreaction in the sense where, people probably saw, Jacksonville wins by 10, AFC South champion coming right up and coming back, should be an easy one. I think that the Jaguars are still, my concerns, I should say, for the Jaguars have not been alleviated. I actually think they've been confirmed. Neuby, any thoughts?
Yeah, and let's be real. They were, Anthony Richardson doing a little bit too much at the end of the game and getting himself injured away from definitely not covering this game, and clearly a little sour grapes. I was on the Colts, and it felt like a bad beat gone wrong in that one. But the reality for the Jaguars remains the exact same. This is a team that if you want to profit, like I rarely will just like back blind trends and blind things that happen, but fading the Jacksonville Jaguars in the first half is insanely profitable. Just look at the splits of the first half of Trevor Lawrence, first half versus second half. Think about what happened in the playoffs last year. They were dead to rights, and then they were able to come back against the Chargers. Again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but this is a team who always starts off slow, and they were lucky that they were playing a team with a rookie quarterback, because if they do that in any other game, they spot another team, they let a team hang around. It nearly came back to bite them, and I'm kind of with you. I definitely wasn't backing any season overs for them. I thought it was ridiculous that you had to lay a price with them to win the division. So I'm not buying any Jacksonville Jaguars Super Bowl tickets either. They didn't do much to change my perception on them coming into the year, and I think you and I were a little bit against the marketplace on the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I'm right there with you. Congrats for the win. It was a nice win. Love seeing it for Doug Peterson. I'm with you. I think Trevor Lawrence is fine, but again, this is a team who's going to be right around 500, maybe 2 games over it if things break right for them. So I'm right there with you, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. On the same exact page with that, they have obviously a major test hosting the Kansas City Chiefs, who now have Chris Jones back. I have not seen anything on Travis Kelce, but I'm under the impression he will not be suiting up. Only a 3-point spread. It was 2.5 before the confirmed news about Chris Jones. They have played each other twice last year. The playoff game, they only lost by 7. Again, Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley, they showed that connection very early and often in that game. So, got to give credit where it's due. Lawrence is him, and that connection is great, and Lawrence could take this team on his back and win a game if he beats the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm changing my tune. I'll gladly admit I have egg on my face when I'm wrong. But until then, I think that they actually confirm my priors on why I should be down on Jacksonville. Neuby, Thursday Night Football, Birds, Link, Minnesota Vikings. Talk to me. I want to hear from you. First of all, Neuby, as we have known, if you don't know, I will preface this by saying, as a Birds fan, he is also a realist. So I appreciate hearing his insight. He had a good look on taking New England last week and feeding his Birds. It's just one of those games where that one pick six kind of just threw everything off to start the game. But enough of that. We have the Eagles 7-point favorites. That number actually opened at 7.5. So I was staring at the WagerTalk Live odds screen. Quickly bought down to 7 though. Obviously, tons of time for that to move here and there. Total 48.5. But Neuby, props, teasers, sides, totals, anything. Talk to me about Birds, Vikings, and what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is when I lived around Philadelphia, was an Eagles season ticket holder, so I do love my Birds, but there's always bet with your head, not with your heart, and I like Marco D'Angelo likes to say on Bet On It when he talks about his Steelers, I will bet against my Birds just the same that I will bet on them, and we proved that last week. Again, I think we should have gotten that ticket home, but hey, we're moving forward, and now it's a Thursday night football game against the Minnesota Vikings. It's interesting because it's the same kind of situation that you saw last year, yep. Philadelphia coming off of a win and getting to play their second game in prime time against a Vikings team. Unfortunately, last year, we got to get a really nice number because the Vikings were crazy overhyped. They beat the Green Bay Packers in week 1. They were flying high, and the Eagles threw all kinds of ice water on that with a 24-7 demonstrable win. But now they're taking on the Vikings at home again. It's a Thursday night football game. Everybody all week long, you're going to hear the talking heads talk about Kirk Cousins in prime time. Kirk Cousins out of the 1 o'clock slot, blah, blah, blah. I'll tell you why. I'm not surprised that the marketplace swooped in and grabbed that hook. This is going to be a tighter game than 7 points. Early lean for me is I'm going to take the 7 with the Vikings because part of the handicap, if you like the Philadelphia Eagles, is you're expecting their offense to look better because you're going to say, oh, well, the Vikings just played. They just lost to the Buccaneers. They drove up and down the field on them. They really didn't. In that 20-17 game, 169 passing yards for the Bucs, just 73 yards on the ground. And again, it's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm hoping that the Philadelphia Eagles offense is a little better than the Bucs, but Minnesota Vikings, they were able to move the ball. They just weren't able to get the point output that they were able to get. So I think, them coming in off a loss, the Eagles scraping together a win. I don't know if I would go as far to say the Vikings win outright. I think the Eagles somehow find a way to end up winning this game. But I also think you're hoping that this offense looks a little bit better. And I think that's why you're seeing, it's not like it's a high total, but at 48.5, there's some scoring to be expected in this football game. And for me, I think there's going to be an overcorrection of an issue that the Philadelphia Eagles had offensively, and that was Dallas Goedert, the tight end for the Birds, was wide open on several plays. Would have walked in to the end zone, and Jalen Hurts just didn't see him. Jalen Hurts didn't look right. Jalen Hurts looked like he was thinking while playing instead of just playing. And maybe that had something to do with the rain. Maybe that had something to do with the defensive pressure that he was getting. I'm not positive. All I know is he didn't look like Jalen Hurts. So I think there's going to be a concerted effort to get the ball to Dallas Goedert. And I think the books are kind of seeing that too. His reception total that's plus money at over 4.5. I think I have a way to attack that a little bit better. And that is if there are points expected in this game, Nick Sirianni is a player coach through and through, and he wants to get a smile on Dallas Goedert's face as quickly as possible. If they're around the goal line, if they can run that famous spider 2-wide banana and get a check down right to their tight end, Nick Sirianni is going to do that. And there's a price out there for Dallas Goedert to score anytime touchdown is plus 270. If you expect touchdowns in this game, I think one of them is going to the tight end who didn't even get a target last week's game. So first one for me is going to be Dallas Goedert getting into the end zone with a 48.5 total. Give me that at plus 270 is one that I'm going to be eyeing.
Yeah, and I'm with you here when it comes to this matchup. Not anything I'm dying to bet. Like 7.5, again, like mad that I hesitated because I was like staring at it. I'm like,
yeah,
you're giving me the hook, like, Thursday night. Then also in the back of my head was thinking that, like you said, same exact scenario as last year. Eagles come home, play the Vikings, and actually beat them down. But obviously all things are not the same. The Vikings did lose last week, but actually not. They actually played relatively well for a losing football team. So I guess some kudos in some sense there, even though they obviously came up short at home against a Buccaneers team that, depending on where you were on them, I mean, I know the market was low on them, but I don't think that the Buccaneers are all that bad from a roster perspective. But digression aside, I'm with you. It just seems like 7.5 points is too many. Also, don't see the Vikings coming in and outright beating the Eagles because, home team now. The week of rust is gone. I anticipated Jalen Hurts being better this week. And as you know, Jalen Carter, the rookie, I'm pretty sure led the league in pressures this past week. And that is a scary, 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 scary sight for the rest of the NFC and the rest of the NFL. So can totally see the Eagles coming in and kind of winning this game. With the touchdowns, you said it's a 48.5 point total, so there should be scoring on both ends. But Neuby, you're telling me Jake Elliott's going to hit 2 field goals, or are they going to rely on some more touchdowns in this matchup?
Well, that's the thing is I just look at this number, Jake Elliott over 1.5 field goals. It's minus 110. So you're just laying, your customary 10 cents of juice there. And this is a guy who, if the Eagles didn't have Jake Elliott on the field in New England, they lose that game. He outscored the offense by himself off his foot. And Jake Elliott has always been kind of a lifeblood for this team when the offense isn't able to pick it up because he has that range hitting 2 50-yard field goals. And I think the fact that we're looking at a 1.5, it has to be an auto play for me, because if the Eagles offense does still have some growing pains to go through with their new offensive coordinator, Brian Johnson, and with maybe the new scheme and maybe the struggles for Jalen Hurts, they should still be able to move the ball a little bit on this Vikings team. Now, if those drives sputter, everybody talks about how, fourth down aggression, they're going to go for it. I think the Eagles realize the weapon that they have in Jake Elliott. So, even if they're on the plus side of the field in a game that could potentially be a little bit tighter than people expect, I think Nick Sirianni has changed his thinking a little bit of always going for it on 4th and long, always going for it. So I think at 1.5, it's almost a free roll for me for Jake Elliott kicking 2 through. He just had 5 last week, so I'm surprised that we're not seeing this number juiced a little bit more. So it's a little bit situation for me that the offense still has to figure itself out, but it's also just a really good number. And I think it's one that it's probably going to close a little bit higher as far as the juice is concerned. So while it's sitting at minus 110, if people are watching on a Tuesday, I think Jake Elliott primetime field goals is a great look at home. Give me Jake Elliott over the 1.5 field goals. Let's have him kick a bunch, have Dallas Goedert score a touchdown. That works for me. That's a perfect recipe for a win over the Minnesota Vikings. So that's how I'm going to attack it.
No, completely understand that. And we could probably do a whole other segment on this. Not going to dive into it now, but there is merit in taking points. Like, don't forget, you have to score more points to win. Like, obviously, yes, 7 or 6 is more than 3. But, taking the 3 points is something that should be done more often in certain situations. But that'll wrap it up for our over and under reactions for week 1, as well as our Thursday night football breakdown. We'll be back on Thursday discussing more games for the week 2 slate. Again, best way to support us is to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as well as heading on over to GoldSheet.com to get your weekly newsletters. You can get them once, you get them on a weekly, get it for the season, breakdowns of every college and NFL pro game with trends, stats, analysis, as well as picks on WagerTalk.com, WT.buzz/GS. Find Neuby on Twitter at Neuby Talks and myself at Slime Action. Thank you guys for listening. Best of luck with your Thursday night bets, and we'll see you guys on Thursday.